Antifa, they call themselves anti-fascists, and they wear masks and they carry sticks and helmets and shit, and they
intimidate people.
Exactly. They use fascism to stop fascism.
Welcome to the channel. I'm the Obnoxious Anarchist. Alright comrades, I split this video into 3 parts. Firstly, we'll look at some dictionary definitions. Secondly, I'll go over 2 archetypal Islamophobes. The first model is called the Trumpian model, and the second model is called the Legultian model. And lastly, I want to focus on Islamophobia in my home province of Quebec. Now let's get started on some definitions. Merriam-Webster defines Islamophobia as an irrational fear or an aversion to or discrimination against Islam or people who practice Islam. Cambridge Dictionary defines Islamophobia as an unreasonable dislike or fear of and prejudice against Muslims or Islam. Here we see Islamophobia is defined primarily as an irrational and unreasonable fear of and discrimination against Muslims. For a more comprehensive definition, I went to Islamophobia.org. They write, in short, Islamophobia is anti-Muslim racism. At length, Islamophobia is a fear, hatred, or prejudice toward Islam and Muslims that results in a pattern of discrimination and oppression. Islamophobia creates a distorted understanding of Islam and Muslims by transforming the global and historical faith tradition of Islam, along with the rich history of cultural and ethnic diversity of its adherents, into a set of stereotyped characteristics, most often reducible to themes of violence, civilizational subversion, and fundamental otherness. Islamophobia must also be understood as a system of both religious and racial animosity that is perpetuated by private citizens as well as cultural and political structures. I really like this definition because it highlights the both racial and religious animosity that defines Islamophobia. Now, I want to focus on a couple of examples of Islamophobic politicians. The first model is the Trumpian model. The Trumpian model, named obviously after American President Trump, is characterized by its overt and aggressive Islamophobia.
I think Islam hates us.
Unbelievable hatred. There is a Muslim problem in the world.
But you do believe overall there is a Muslim problem in the world?
Well, there is a Muslim problem, absolutely. You just have to turn on your television set.
All 1.6 billion Muslims?
I mean a lot of them.
They're trying to take over our children and convince them how wonderful ISIS is and how wonderful Islam is. And we have to look at the Muslims and we have to do something. We cannot stand by and be the stupid people while our country is destroyed.
By contrast, the Legultian model, which is named after the Premier of Quebec, François Legault, and his immigration minister, Simon-Jolin Barrette, who looks like the unholy demon child of Ben Shapiro and Richard Spencer, is characterized by its covert and less aggressive appearing nature. In this model, the politicians act like Islamophobia doesn't even exist. While all Islamophobic attitudes are disgusting, the Legultian model, that is to say the more covert model, is particularly horrible. To explain what I mean a little better here, I'll have to give you a little more context. This Legultian model that I've conceptualized gets its name from the leader of the province of Quebec, François Legault. He and his immigration minister, Simon-Jolin Barrette, have constructed legislation that is now law in Quebec called Law 21. This law targets some people who wear religious symbols and work for the state. The main contention here is that while this bill does indeed target other religious minorities, like Sikh men who wear turbans, or Jewish men who wear the kippah, it really affects Muslim women who wear the hijab most. Now let me explain. Law 21 targets teachers specifically because they're in a position of state power. Teaching is a woman-dominated profession throughout Canada, so there's no doubt that this law affects women who wear religious symbols, like the hijab, most. This law functions as a call to local women who wear hijabs that they're not needed in a sphere where their expertise is not only valuable on its own, but is indeed needed here in Quebec. I'll do a more comprehensive video about Law 21 in the near future. Now, Mr. Legault and Mr. Barrette will never admit this fact. They act with that smugness since it is in fact now prohibited for Quebec teachers to wear hijabs. All this means that there is indeed an issue of Islamophobia within Quebec society. It's systematic, and in my opinion, it needs to be confronted on the streets. But these bozos in power act like it doesn't even exist, and that's particularly frustrating to have to deal with. I mean, it's frustrating for me. I can only imagine how frustrating it is for the hundreds of women who wear hijabs all over Quebec. There's no way I could fit all I wanted to say about Islamophobia into one video. Here we've looked at some concrete examples of how Islamophobia manifests systematically in Quebec. But stay tuned for part 2 in the near future. Some people in our society are so irrationally scared of Islam that they can't even stomach someone in a hijab teaching their children. Not wanting your kids to be taught by someone wearing a hijab in fear that they will subconsciously turn your children into Muslims is the epitome of Islamophobia. It's an irrational and unreasonable fear of Islam and those who practice Islam. Realistically, Islamophobia is a problem in Canada from coast to coast, and it's the clear continuation of this racist project we call North America. For starters, we can at least make it a point to seek out and listen to the voices of the actual people that Islamophobia affects most.
This is nothing new. It's something that I've experienced ever since I came to Canada.
Trump has been receiving a lot of attention lately, but to be honest, as a Muslim Canadian, we've been experiencing hate and bigotry for years now. I can't even remember a time where I didn't experience it, or we didn't experience it.
To go and teach is not easy. Of course, you have to go through a certain amount of years to get your diploma. But it's not like any other job. Teaching is like a passion. If you're not passionate about teaching, you cannot do it. That's why we see a lot of people who start as teachers and then they end up abandoning because it's too hard. We still think that it's worth it to be a teacher. But to ask those women to pick between their identity and the job they're most passionate about is totally unfair. Nobody would have to pick between their identity and their job.
I have lived here for more than 20 years now, and I think it's time for me to maybe move on. I felt that Quebec City was home for a long time, but I don't know anymore.
I was thinking about leaving Quebec because here you don't feel welcome, and people want to feel welcome.
There is Islamophobia in Quebec. We are not gonna lie to ourselves and say, nah, people, they don't, there doesn't exist. Yes, it does.
We already have enough working against us, but our government is supposed to be there to stand up for us, and that's not happening.
I'm the Obnoxious Anarchist. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and if you really want to do me a favor, consider sharing this video with as many people as you can. Solidarity, comrades.